Jesus, you love us so much. You went to the cross for us. And so today, now, reveal your character, yourself to us through your word and show us what you want us to hear. Thanks for loving us so much. Your word is powerful. Amen. Can anyone here think back, for some of us it's further than others, about your high school English class? Think about high school English class. Some of you are there now. Some of you haven't even made it to high school yet, and you're going to have your high school English class. Does anyone remember any of the poetry that you learned in your high school English class? I don't mean that cringy stuff that you wrote on the back of your folder now. I mean the stuff that they taught you. I have forgotten so many things that I learned in high school. So much math, so much science. But some things in the English class have still just like they were a hook. You know, they got into me. And one of my favorite poems is one that I learned in English class. And it's this famous poem. It was written in the early 20th century by Robert Frost. And it's about this walk in the woods in the autumn. Maybe you've heard it or you've heard part of it, but it's going to be on your screen, and it goes like this. He writes, "Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry that I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, for it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, in leaves no steps had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, though knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh somewhere ages and ages hence." And even if you don't know the poem, you might just know this part that gets quoted and put up on posters a lot. "Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference." You guys heard that one? Go Robert Frost. You heard that one? Or maybe you've heard the last chunk of it. That last chunk of it is really popular because it seems to be that it's about making the unique choice in life. And I want to say that I made that. I didn't do what all those other clowns did. I didn't take that road. No, I chose the different road. That's not what the poem's about. The poem is, in fact, not about the road less traveled. In fact, in the poem, there isn't a road less traveled. It's that the speaker is going to look back in his life and he's going to tell himself, he's going to tell other people, oh, I took the one less traveled by, and that's made the difference. It's really about the road you didn't take. The name of the poem is The Road Not Taken. So I hope I didn't ruin that poem for you. But it's deep. It's really about choices. It's really about the finality of choices that we take. That you make a choice, you act on it, and that you can't take it back. And today we're coming to the end of our series, Jesus on Trial, and we're looking at these different trials that Jesus went through. And Pastor Christensen just outlined those for you, from the Sanhedrin to Pilate, from Pilate to Herod, from Herod back to Pontius Pilate. And at this fourth trial, choices are front and center. Some roads that could have been taken but weren't, and the consequences of those choices that were taken. These were choices that were made, they were acted on, and they couldn't be taken back. And unlike Robert Frost's poem, where both roads are pretty equally traveled, in this case, not all the roads are equal. You know, a lot does get made about our choices. You probably look back in your life and think about some choices that you're glad you made or that you'd wish you made different ones. I was just talking this morning with someone about choices about college and choices of what career that people have taken. You make choices of your spouse. You make day-to-day choices. This conversation I'm going to get in, or that conversation. What things am I going to say? What am I going to not say? What am I going to do? A lot of things have been said about choices. And there was one thing that I did a quick Google search for one phrase, and it came up. I was looking for a particular author, but these same things have been said so often by so many other people in different ways, but making the same point. that I didn't even attach an author to this one idea. And there's so many different ways of putting it. Life is defined by the choices you make, so make the right ones. Your choices define you. Remember, you're a result of your choices. Life is a matter of choices, and every choice you make makes you. Is that true? Anybody watch the same 30 seconds of the Oscars that I watched this week? Some choices got made that kept getting talked about. Chris Rock up there on the platform, he made a choice about a joke to tell. Will Smith, he made a choice to come up to that platform and to do what he did. You make a choice, you act on it, you can't take it back. And those choices that they make, especially about Will Smith and Chris Rock, people are going to be talking about those choices whenever those guys come up for years and years. Now, today up here on this platform, I promise not to make a joke about anybody's wife. And I'd appreciate if you promise to make the choice to not come up here and give me a smack, even if you think I happen to deserve it. Do it after worship. Have a little class, okay? But like me right now, like Chris Rock was, Pilate is standing up there on a platform, and he's faced with choices, with a couple of roads. What road is he going to take? What is he going to do? Now, let's get this straight. Pilate does not care about Jesus. Pilate does not care about the intricacies of Jewish laws. Pilate does care about his own grasp of control of the situation. He cares about his own law and order. So he's up there faced with choices, and it's a kind of an interesting calculus that he's kind of making here with Jesus, because everyone in this crowd in front of him wants Jesus to be executed, saying, "Crucify him." But Jesus is also a popular prophet in Galilee. So there's both of these things going on. So Pilate looks down one path as far as he can see it. He looks down the other path as far as he can see it. And Pilate tries to take the compromising road. Pilate thinks maybe there's a way to make both choices. So Pilate says, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to punish him and then release him. The word punish, incidentally, is the same word for educate. So he's like telling him, I'll teach him a lesson, and then I'm going to release him. Maybe we can do both things here. Pilate's compromising. Notice that Pilate did not say what he probably knew. I see that it's clear. These are false, trumped-up charges about Jesus. You guys don't have a case. Jesus is going free, and that's final. Pilate chooses to play both sides. You know, Jesus is not someone who advises compromise. We were in Luke's gospel. Earlier in Luke's gospel, Jesus is asked about what's the most important commandment of all the commandments. And Jesus summarizes it like this, and he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and all your strength and all your mind. No compromise. And we listen to those words of Jesus. And if you're like me, you say, yes, that's right, no compromise. With all your strength. Well, how about most of my strength? With all your heart. Well, how about part of my heart? Because part of my heart wants to worship God and honor Him. Part of my heart really wants to be lazy, wants to take the side of selfishness, because we take the compromising road too. We want our strength and our heart to be on the side of our own convenience, our own lustfulness. It reminds me of Augustine. He was a bishop in North Africa, just a couple centuries after Jesus was on earth, and he famously admitted to praying this prayer. He says, "I pray this prayer: Lord, make me pure, but not yet." Compromise. I want it both. I'm going to worship God, but I also want to ignore Him when I join in with the crowd in the school cafeteria. I want to worship God, but I want to be on my own when I report my taxes, when I talk about my neighbor behind his back. But like Robert Frost said, you can't go down two roads and be one traveler. So even when you compromise, you're making a choice, and you act on it, and you can't take it back. Well, Pilate's non-choice choice, it riles up the crowd. They're not liking this at all. So we get a look at the road that the crowd takes. So the reason they brought Jesus in the first place is because he was upsetting the order of things. With these miracles he was performing, with these healings that he was performing, even on the Sabbath, and everyone knows you're not supposed to do work on the Sabbath day. These authoritative statements that he was making. And if this crowd just goes down the road of accepting Jesus and his authoritative claims, that's going to change everything. That's going to change their worldview. It's going to change their lives forever. They said that's not something that we can take. They want to stay how they were. So the road they take is the road of self-preservation, keeping things how they are. So the crowd, they start shouting, like you heard on the video, the name of this other guy. They say, away with this man, Jesus, release to us Barabbas. So they have someone else in mind who they want to release. Luke introduces him to the readers this way. He says that Barabbas had been thrown in prison for an insurrection in the city and for murder. But what's he doing up here on the platform? Well, Luke doesn't really explain this as much in his gospel, but Matthew and Mark in their gospels, they explain a custom that Pilate had. You had to understand that Pilate, he works for the Roman government. And the Roman government, as you know, the Roman Empire stretches, for miles and miles in every direction. And it represents so many conquered cultures that are now under Roman rule, like the Jewish culture is here in Judea. And the Romans were ruthless rulers to keep everybody in line. It was the Romans who invented crucifixion, just to give you a sense of their ruthlessness. But it also benefited them to throw a bone to the people and the cultures that they ruled over. So think about it this way. Maybe you have a boss, maybe you work in an office where the boss is a real jerk and just treats everybody like dirt. Not in our office. Not in our office. I watch movies, I see TV shows of such things, and maybe you work in there or you've seen ones like that. The boss treats everybody like dirt, but once a year, he brings everybody pizza. That's Pilate. You see, because Pilate, part of his PR to the Jewish people was that every year at their biggest holiday, Passover, he would release one of the Jewish prisoners that are being held in Roman prison. We know from history that Pontius Pilate was a ruthless ruler. But he's like, well, here's your slice of pizza. Here's something for you. And so now the crowd, this is interesting because the crowd falsely brought Jesus in with charges of insurrection. Because they're like, hey, this is the quickest way that we're going to get a guilty verdict and an execution verdict. Pilate, he's trying to overthrow the government. Then they bring out someone who really was trying to overthrow the government. And he was a murderer on top of that. And you see their hypocrisy because this crowd says, no, we'll just release him. Release Barabbas instead. So Jesus and Barabbas are both standing up here. And it's kind of an interesting parallel because of Barabbas' name. Names mean things. You might know what your name means. The name Barabbas, in Hebrew, that means son of the Father. Bar Abba. And names back then, people were named son of so-and-so a lot, Bartholomew, Barnabas, Barabbas. And we don't know how Barabbas, why he was called son of the Father. He could have had a father who was a member of the Jewish council, who was a Jewish elder who bore that title. It could have been a nickname. We don't know. What we do know is that Barabbas was guilty. This son of the Father was guilty. But standing next to him was Jesus, the innocent Son of the Father, the true Son of the Father, who had no guilt. And you hear the crowd, and they say, away with this man, release to us Barabbas. Now, the uncomfortable truth for us is how often we choose that same road of self-preservation. Now, we don't go out of our way to do it. We don't want to consciously choose the despicable and offensive and rebellious and guilty son of the Father. But here's what we end up doing. We choose to construct our own. And we say, who's a son of the Father that we can handle? It would be a Jesus that only asks of me the things that I'm already doing. He's happy with that. It's a Jesus that doesn't offend my friends or anybody else. It's a Jesus who thinks that everything that I'm doing is fine. Not fine, great. The level that Jesus expects just happens to be the level that I'm at right now. So we make our own Jesus, and then we choose him. And then the true Son of the Father, we say, we don't need him. Take him away. We make a choice, and we act on it, and we can't take it back. Now, Jesus, he already knew the crowd's choice. A week before this day, Luke records Jesus when he was riding into the city, when he was coming into the city that last time. It says, as Jesus approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it. And he said, if you, even you, had known this day what would bring you peace, but now it is hidden from your eyes. So many of our choices and the roads that we do take, they do hide God's peace from us, don't they? You've experienced it. Maybe you've wept over roads that you've taken. Jesus weeps over that too. And he weeps tears of love and compassion and of wanting the very best for you. But Jesus does more than weep. And even in this text, where Jesus is just standing there in chains, we see the road that Jesus chooses to take. And it's strange because if you were there at that scene in that crowd, it doesn't look like Jesus is making any choices. He's bound. He's been led from one trial to another. And the crowd, well, they seem to have a choice. They're persistent. They keep crying out. They didn't just shout, crucify him. They kept shouting it. They didn't just demand, they insistently demanded that Pilate crucify Jesus. But it wasn't their choice. Jesus chose the road to the cross. It was his choice. John recorded in his gospel that Jesus is talking with his disciples. And he says, no one takes my life from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down and authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father. So in here, as Jesus is standing there, you see the true Son of the Father doing the Father's perfect will, where Jesus' choice was to take the sentence that Barabbas had coming. Jesus' choice was to take the sentence that you and I had coming. Jesus didn't take the impulsive road like maybe we saw Will Smith take, or that we take. There's just fewer cameras on us. Jesus didn't take the road of aggression like we might say Vladimir Putin did in this past month, or that we do. We just don't have as many tanks and as many airplanes. We're not as famous. Jesus didn't take the popular road. Jesus didn't choose the easy road. But in Jesus' case, there was a road less traveled. And Jesus took that one. His choice was the road that only he could travel. And he traveled that road because Jesus' choice was you. Robert Frost's poem was called The Road Not Taken. Jesus took the road that we don't take. He took the road that only he could. So, you and I, we often take Pilate's road. We often take the crowd's road. But in some ways, you and I are most like Barabbas. He's guilty. He has a sentence hanging over him for the crimes that he's committed. But because of Jesus' choice, the guilty man Barabbas goes free. Because of Jesus' choice, you and I are free as well. So Jesus chooses you, and in that choice, Jesus' choice defines you too. Because remember that montage of quotes that we saw up there? You're defined by the choices that you make. Your life is a product of choices. That's partly right. You know, choices that you make, if you make smart choices, that will benefit you down the road. That could keep you out of trouble. I don't want to minimize that. But your identity, who you are, that is a product of a choice. But it's a choice that Jesus makes about you, not a choice that you make about yourself. And his choice is that you belong to him. It says, you did not choose me, Jesus said, John records this, but I chose you. So Jesus defines who you are. When you go after worship and go out there by the main doors and you put your finger in that paint and put your finger on that canvas, I encourage you all to do that. Stand in line, get to know some people, do this. Those fingerprints are a picture of identity. And in our case, it's an identity shaped by Jesus. And then those choices empowers your choices so that God's choice empowers you that through his Spirit, you can make choices that honor Jesus and that serve your neighbor and that benefit and build God's kingdom because of his Spirit that lives in you. He's chosen you. And so starting next Sunday, we are going to follow Jesus and see his choice play out as he rides into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. And then on Maundy Thursday and the choices that he makes in serving his disciples. And then on Good Friday and the choice that he makes to be killed, to be crucified for you and me. And then on that Sunday, Easter Sunday, that Resurrection Sunday where he rises from the dead. That is the week that defines us. So Jesus made a choice and he acted on it. And he does not take it back. And that choice has made all the difference. Amen.